My name is Mackenzie. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is March 27th of 2019. If I had one hope tonight, I would hope that, I was never going to touch that. I don't know who's touched it, that's why I wouldn't do it. If I had one hope tonight, I hope that you would find something in Alcoholics Anonymous like I have. In Alcoholics Anonymous, I found a design for living and a way out, and I thought that was never going to be possible. I was one of the guys that when I started drinking and using at about 15, I don't remember putting together more than like a few days. Once I started, the party kind of kept going on until I was 28, 29 was when I finally decided that maybe there's something going on here, after 15 years of pain, there finally came a point to where it's like, all right, maybe I can't do this on my own. But just a little bit about me. I was born and raised out in Reno, Nevada. It's the place where you can drink all the time, gamble all the time, and it was good. I had great Mormon parents. We were a very heavily church-oriented family. We went to church every week. We followed all the rules. I don't think anybody in my immediate family has ever smoked a cigarette, let alone drink a beer, which is interesting because we actually owned a beer and liquor distributorship in Reno, Nevada. So that was always interesting. And growing up in the church, it was something you noticed that people in our ward didn't really like us. They kind of kept their distance from us. And I didn't really know what was really going on. I was, a young kid when I started noticing these things that people treated us differently. So I found out what shame was at a pretty young age. But growing up was great. It was very normal. My dad worked, mom didn't. She was always home. I couldn't get away with shit. She was always home. They never left on the weekends. They were always there, but they were great parents. They provided us with a life that was great. You grow up playing sports and basketball and football and whatever it was, and we were always busy doing something. Life was good growing up. I do remember at an early age, always had this need to fit in, and I'm the youngest of four brothers. So I have three olders, and I always felt like I needed to gain their approval. I used to do just some of the dumbest shit to try to get them to hang out with me because I was the weird younger brother. We had this slide in our backyard on this swing set, and a couple weeks before I had gotten stitches on my chin, and they were trying to figure out how we could ride this dump truck down the slide, and they couldn't. They weren't willing to do it, but they figured that they could talk me into doing it. And me trying to gain their approval, I went down this slide face first. I hit this big ass piece of wood and split my chin open again. My dad was super pissed about that. I think we saw the same doctor both times, and he was like, "What the hell are you guys doing back here so soon?" But that's a reoccurring theme in my life. Is I'm always trying to, or I always have this fear of losing something that I want. Fear has ruled my life for a long time, and to a certain extent it still kind of does today, depending on what it is. I was always, growing up, I was bouncing around from group to group. If a group would get too close to me or I felt like we were getting too close, I would change groups and move over and hang out with some different kids and do different things, and that was just the story of me growing up the entire time, was me always just moving around. I'd hang out with the skater kids, and I'd never been on a skateboard before, which makes no sense. But I was like this jock kid that just kind of bounced around from every group in high school and knew everybody pretty well. But as time went on, I think it was I was 13 when I had my first drink of alcohol. And that was hanging out with those skater stoner kids, which was pretty awesome. But I remember having this fear of if I don't do this right now, I'm going to lose this group of friends. And so no matter what my morals, no matter what my my upbringing had taught me up until that point, like everything was discarded very quickly because I wanted to be a part of the group. And that's just a very like reoccurring theme that played a part in a lot of, high school. So after that, I mean, I think I had that one drink and I was like, oh my God, like what did I do? I'm such a sinner now. And then, high school kind of rolls around, you get away from it a little bit, and then it was like the main group of friends, they were starting to get into it. And, this was like a big bulk of my friends, and my mom always told me to hang out with the Mormon kids. Out in Reno, there's not a whole lot of us. We're a pretty small group in high school. But she told me to hang out with all the Mormon kids, and I just happened to pick the 5 bad eggs in our steak or whatever you want to call it, and we hung out a lot. We they were great friends, but like this fear of losing them was greater than anything else. We were pretty rowdy in high school. We did a lot of alcohol runs, a lot of beer runs. We were robbing people left and right. We were getting in fights all the time on the weekends. I had, in our graduating class, I couldn't even tell you how many DUIs we had in our class, how many people that had multiple DUIs. That's just what we did out there. We loved to party, and I was a part of that scene. Never really experimented with substances for a while, and then finally started getting into that, and that always kind of grew into something bigger. You start with this, it moves to this, it moves to that. It kept snowballing, and we did a lot of different drugs in high school, and it was pretty wild. So I get to senior year, I quit playing sports. This is all I'm doing is I'm drinking pretty regularly during the week and showing up to school, and since I quit all those sports, I moved my schedule up to the first part of the day so I can start working to start feeding all my habits, and I had my first kind of run-in with the cops when I was 17. I was one of my brothers was a returned missionary, and he let me borrow one of his cars. And I was so stoked because I finally got to not drive my piece of shit truck that I had in high school, because he had this nice little sports car that he was going to let me drive, and he was going to be gone for a week. Well, the first day, we ended up going bowling, and Monday night bowl night was pretty cheap drinks. We got pretty lit, and I obviously was going to drive because I was the best at it. I was voted class of 2009's best drunk driver unanimously. But we drank a lot, and it's like, oh, this is like a normal thing. This is a normal drinking excursion for me. This is what I do, and I thought I was going to be cool, and we were going to do some drifts around some corners. And I ended up crashing this car, and the cops come, and I'm like, oh shit, and I start running, and I lock my buddy out of his own house and run through the house, and I climb up this wall in the backyard and just keep running, and I ran for miles before I got home. And I finally show up at home, and instantly my mom knew something was wrong, and I was like, ah, shit, I'm caught for sure. Because I always thought I was getting away with it. She never really caught me red-handed. She didn't ask a whole lot of questions either, but she never really caught me exactly red-handed, and this time she did. And she was telling me that we had to go back, and I was like, what are you talking about? I just left there. I can't just show back up now. And so we did, and I was not very happy about it. I was like, Mom, I'm going to go to jail if you take me back there. Let's just report the car stolen. This is going to work out. They're never going to know. No one ever really saw me driving the car. This is going to be fine. And she wasn't having it. You need to pay for your dues or whatever the hell she said. It was like, all right, whatever. And we show back up, and there's all these cops there, and I get out of the car, and I'm kind of trying not to make eye contact with them. I know what's going on. And one of the cops eventually gets all the rest of them to go away, and he was the guy that showed up first, and he talked to me, and he just kind of laid it out straight. He's like, all right, well, we can do two things here. It's like, you can admit that you were driving the car, and we'll take you on a DUI, and you're going to get arrested tonight. He's like, I was like, okay, that sounds kind of terrible. I don't want to get arrested. Or wasn't admitting. He's like, we'll just take you for the DUI, and we'll admit you. But he told me that, like, if I fought this, I was going to win. He's like, or you can go home and sleep in your own bed tonight, and you could just admit to driving this car, and we'll do like a reckless driving and minor in consumption. And I was like, all right, like I choose that one. I don't want to go to jail. So I ended up doing that, and that obviously creates a lot of problems with parents at home and their last kid, kind of drinking a lot and using drugs, and then they have these, my 3 older brothers that are all returned missionaries. Everybody's married in the temple, they're active, and then there's me. It's easier for me to start on what I haven't done than what I have done. So like they did the best that they knew how with what they had. So I get done with high school. I'm looking to go to college and not really knowing what I want to do. And a couple friends were going to this junior college that was in Northern California. And I remember me and my parents, we went and checked out this college, and it was like this tiny, shitty junior college. Nothing super exciting. But we drove around the town, and as we were driving around the town, there was all these like young dudes and young people just like playing beer pong in their front yard. I was like, dude, this is the place, dude. Like, are you shitting me? Like, you can do whatever you want around here. Like, this is gonna be awesome. And right then and there, I knew that like that was gonna be the place that I was gonna go and go to college. So I ended up going out there, and I was out in California for 3 years. I bet I remember 10% of it. I couldn't even tell you how many credits I finished in the 3 years I was there. I was enrolled the first year, sort of the second year, and definitely not the third. Before like heading out to California when I was in high school, like my oldest brother got back from his mission, and he got married very quickly. And she ended up getting cancer that came back. And within that first year, they got married, they had a baby, and she died. I've had maybe 2 moments in my life that have sobered me up instantly, and that's one of them. That was 15 years ago, and I still remember exactly where I was, what we were doing. We were down in Lake Havasu. My friend his dad had like a timeshare down there, and we were partying for spring break. We were pretty clever. We had the beer koozies, and then we would cut Coke cans, and then we'd put it over the top of our beer so we could walk around. The cops didn't know what was going on. But I remember that phone call and like not knowing what to say, and like immediately being like, this isn't fair. Like, God isn't fair. God doesn't like us. He doesn't care about us. And that's where everything took kind of a steep decline in believing that there is a God and there is a higher power, or there is anything out there that really cares. So after that, like everything really like ramped up. I was using every day. I was drinking very, very regularly on the weeks, and because I didn't know how to feel, I didn't want to feel. I didn't want to have these emotions going around, and like I didn't know how to express myself, and this was the best way that I knew how to do it. And so I went around like that for years, not even like talking to anybody about it, never saying anything about it. With like how angry I was and confused about the situation and not happy about it. Just really like hated God at that point, and I was pretty convinced that God didn't like me either at that point. With all the using and all the drinking and all the other, things I was doing in my life and terrible decisions I was making, like I figured why does he care about me? Like he doesn't love me, he doesn't care about me. Like I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because this is what normal 20-year-olds do. So I was out there in California for a while, and nothing seemed like it was a problem. Like I didn't think that me So I had a couple roommates. One went full-time to school, the other one went full-time to work, and then I was just a full-time drinker at home. So they would leave their ways, and I would kind of leave with them, but I always ended up at 7-Eleven buying an 18-pack, and then I would come home. And by the time these guys got home, like I was already like shit-faced, and the best drink specials were always during the week. So we ended up at the bar like every night, and that was my life. That whole last year I was living out there was just like this weird blackout, sober up, blackout, sober up, blackout. I really don't remember much of that entire last year of being out there, and I thought that was pretty normal for being 21. Like most people are doing this. Most people are drinking all day, every day, and then drinking even more at night, and using drugs to stay up so you can drink more, and all that kind of wild shit, and doing benders on 5 days straight, and then sleeping a couple hours. I remember waking up on Cinco de Mayo one year, I think it was that last year, and I had these huge like black bags underneath my eyes. It looked like someone beat the shit out of me the night before, but it was really just because I hadn't slept in like 4 days, and I looked so bad from just drinking the whole time and using a lot, and it was just like that was normal to me. Like I thought that was okay, and everybody's just like, this is not okay, like you're not okay. But I kept telling myself that I was. So, eventually, the party kind of like fizzled out, and everybody that I knew moved away from California, so I ended up back in Reno. And, working, moving from job to job, relationship to relationship, friend group to friend group. And this was the story for years. It was just like this same cycle of work during the day, be as loaded as I can during the day, and then, drinking at night. And that was the story of my life for a long time. And then it, eventually got to a point to where like I found like opiates and heroin, and like I for a long time had been looking for this escape from life. Alcohol wasn't doing it anymore. Any of the other drugs I was doing wasn't doing it anymore. But when I found that, it seemed like I had arrived. That this was going to be the thing that I was going to do, and like I was pretty happy with it because I was pretty like upset with the way that my life was going. It didn't seem like I had any sort of direction. I was just doing this or doing that, or trying to survive paycheck to paycheck, and this made all those like worries about where I'm at in my life like go away. So I dove headfirst into that, and was surprised how quickly things spiraled. I got fired. That was weird. I couldn't believe that I got fired from a job. Like I had always quit before I would get fired, but this time they really got me, and I got fired before I got the chance. And I still didn't think that there was a problem. I still didn't think that me losing all these friends over the next couple of years wasn't a problem. I still didn't think that, even my brothers and like my parents are starting to look at me different, and they're starting to be like, what the hell's going on over here? And no one's really saying anything, but I'm still thinking that everything's fine because I'm still kind of showing up. I'm showing up just enough to like kind of keep them off my back a little bit. And like eventually, I mean, obviously you need money for all this shit. And, not working, I start robbing people, I start stealing from people, I start stealing everything from my family, and it just gets out of control. And I still think at this whole time, like everything's like okay, like I'm doing okay, I'm surviving at least. My parents eventually got me into therapy because that was going to fix me. Still getting loaded, showing up to therapy, and like, what am I doing here? And did that for a while. I had a friend that got put in drug court out there, and they made him go to, I think, 3 or 4 meetings a week or something like that, and he got sick of going. And And so he started paying me to go to these meetings for him, which is my first experience with Alcoholics Anonymous, is being a paid member to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, which is pretty awesome. So if anybody needs their court card signed, I do charge a fee. But I remember showing up to these meetings, and he was paying me $20 an hour. I was like, dude, this is the greatest job I've ever had in my entire life. Like, this is so awesome. Getting loaded out of the parking lot, showing up just shit-faced or whatever it was, and just like sitting in there like, what is going on in here? Like, these people are crazy as hell. And I remember reading the steps and looking at them and being like, that's not going to work for me. There's too much God up there. I remember this guy picked up like his 42-year chip, and I was just so confused on what was going on. I was like, why is this guy still here? I'm pretty sure you've beat it by that amount of time. I was convinced that if I just could get enough time, that like, dude, it just goes away. I had no idea what alcoholism was or addiction or any of that. I mean, I was ignorant to the fact of like whatever was going on with me. So that was my first experience with Alcoholics Anonymous. But right before I moved out here about 5 years ago, I think it was one of my cousin's funerals was happening, and like I obviously couldn't figure out a way to survive while I was out here for 3 days. So like I was just not gonna go. And that was a pretty normal thing. Was trying to figure out how can I go on some of these family trips. Like how can I figure out how to space all this shit out and make sure that it lasts. I did a trip on the East Coast, and I was like, oh, I got enough for like 10 days. I'm gonna be great. Day 3, I'm in pure panic and like freaking out. We did another trip to Hawaii, and another solid plan. Everything was going great until I got to the airport, and took some Xanax, and everything just kind of went. And then I woke up like 3 days later, and somehow was still functioning. Somehow still got there, but that was the story for me. Like everywhere I had to go, every place I had to be, like I had to show up loaded. Like there was no way I was going to be sober for anything. I remember sitting outside of my dealer's house one morning, and I was there probably 5 hours before he was going to wake up, because I thought, like, oh, maybe he'll answer. It'll be so great if he wakes up at 4:30 in the morning or something. Like I have no idea what time it was, but I showed up way early, and then after a while, I was sitting in this parking lot. I had this like emotional like breakdown. I realized that at that moment, this had to happen before anything else could. I couldn't believe that this is where my life is at. My life was, at that point, was a full-time job to be a drug addict and an alcoholic. It consumed every part of my day. It had to start that way, and it always ended that way. I spent countless hours in parking lots, casinos, driving around, and that was like a normal daily routine. It's like, oh, I'll be back in 6 hours when I figure this out, and that's just how it was. And my cousin's funeral, and so everybody leaves the house. I'm staying at my parents' house because obviously I can't afford any sort of rent or any sort of anything because I have nothing to offer at this point. I'm living there. They leave. I clean them out. Anything that I could sell, pawn, trade, it was gone. I remember my dad showed up on his birthday, which was a special birthday surprise for him, to show up to basically an empty house. I'm never going to forget the look of disappointment in his face. And, my dad's is a guy that has very few words, but you can read him pretty well. And, he didn't say anything, and and after a minute, he was like, what are we going to do now? And it felt like at that point, I had lost basically everybody in my life that like maybe I'm going to lose them too. maybe they're going to give up on me too. Like there's a decision that I need to make right here, right now, and what am I going to do? Am I going to ask for some help, or am I going to be homeless? And I asked for some help, and I think it was maybe a week later, we were out here dropping me off at a treatment center, which is not what I imagined my life to be at any point. I don't remember taking that first drink and being like, you know what, I'm going to sign up to be like a booze bag and like a drug addict, and this is going to consume my life. Like I don't ever remember thinking that, feeling that. But that's where it took me. It took everything from me. You know, I was just like this body that was just floating around in life, and you know, sucking the life out of anybody that I could, and manipulating anybody that I could, and taking as much from life as I possibly could to benefit myself. So they dropped me off at treatment. You know, it was a weird experience. You know, there's all these dudes like giving you hugs, like, we love you. I was like, you don't fucking know who I am. Like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? You know, and you know, but I learned a lot of like good stuff there, and you know, I always had this idea that like I'm going to do this 60 days here, and I'm just going to go home. All I need is just a little bit of time away from the last drug or the last alcohol or the last drink. That's all I need. I just need a little bit of time, and everything's going to be fine, and I can go back to my, you know, awesome life back in Reno. And that's what I believed, is I just needed a little bit of time. And so, you know, this treatment center would take us to meetings, you know, and you know, they were always saying, like, if you don't ever want to drink or use ever again, you don't have to. You just have to follow, you know, the steps on the wall. And they always said my worst, like, hated saying that I hate in Alcoholics Anonymous early on was, like, the only thing you have to change is everything. I really didn't like that. So, you know, I get out of treatment, I do their sober living thing, I'm doing their outpatient thing, but like I'm not really doing anything. I'm not working the steps, I don't have a sponsor, I don't have a home group, I'm not in any sort of service commitments. I thought all that stuff was pretty lame. And that it wasn't for me, that I was different from you. You know, I was never really listening or trying to connect with people in the rooms. I was always the guy sitting in the back and then leaving pretty early. Never really saying anything. Definitely not giving out my number, because then you gotta do shit like this. And so, you know, as time went on, and you know, I started getting some things back in my life, and I started getting a car, and I had a steady job, and I had this place to live, and things started to get really good. I remember thinking, like, you know what, like, dude, I'm doing pretty damn good. Like, life's getting pretty good, like, I'm doing great. And, you know, the key word in all that is, like, you know, like, I was taking credit for all these things in my life, and thinking that being sober or anything that I have learned in treatment at this point had nothing to do with it. You know, that I pulled myself out of this somehow. You know, so I made it about, I don't know, 8 months maybe. And then Christmas time rolled around, and this was in 2018. Christmas time rolled around, and I was like, well, I obviously got to go home. Like, I'm not going to spend Christmas out here. I want to go home. And I remember driving back across, you know, the lovely state of Nevada. If you've ever done it, it's pretty exciting. Driving across, and just like, I had that like pit in my stomach and that knot in my stomach, just like feeling like not good about what is about to happen, but not knowing what's going to happen. Never really had intentions to begin with going out there. I was like, I'm just going out there for Christmas, it's going to be fine. And about halfway through, I was like, was it really that bad? You know, how bad was my life? Like, was it really that unmanageable? Am I really powerless? I started questioning all these things that they tried to, you know, drill into me during treatment. And, you know, I tested those waters that weekend, and I had a really solid 4-day relapse planned. It was solid. It was going to work out. I convinced myself that it was just going to be a four-day runner, and I was going to come back here to Utah and everything was going to be fine, you know. But I remember before I showed up to like my dealer's house, like I thought that, like, you know what, like, drugs is what got me here. Maybe if I just take a drink at the bar, like, I'll be okay. You know, never really thought that like alcohol was that big of a deal, especially towards the end. And I remember having that one drink at the bar and sitting there, and it wasn't half hour later, like I was back and using like I used to, and you know, drinking again, and you know, went on this 3-month bender, which was not what I really thought was going to happen, but that's what happened. And you know, it was wild. I ended up losing my job. I was you know, getting close to losing everything again. You know, I was in and out of this treatment center that I was still a part of, and the guy running the treatment center kept like being pretty confused when I was showing up, just like loaded or like, and he was just like, what are you doing here, man? Like why do you keep showing up? Why are you still here? And like I couldn't really ever answer his question, and I kept doing this for a while. You know, and then it got to a certain point to where like he sat me down in his office. He's like, all right, like I want you to do like a writing assignment, and I want like why do you even want to be sober? Like why are you still showing up here? Do you even want to be a part of AA? And he had me answer all these questions. And at this outpatient thing that we had this little wall that had all these pictures on it, and it was pictures from previous guys that had gone through that had passed away. You know, so that was always the reminder that we had every time we were there, and we'd see these guys, and there was a few guys that I knew in there, but not all of them. And I remember going home that night, and I still have this writing assignment, and I read it every year. You know, it was the darkest place I've ever been in my life. I was convinced at that point in my life that it was just easier to die. It was easier to just kill myself, to quit putting everybody else through all this shit. That like the best service I could do to anybody was to be one of the pictures up on the wall. And I was convinced of that, I really was. And you know, I showed up the next day, and you know, everyone kind of rallied around me and you know, convinced me to like, don't go through with it. And you know, like we love you even if you don't love yourself. And I was like, okay, like, and they're just like, just keep showing up and just keep showing up. And I had this therapist there that like kept trying to get me involved in AA. She had been sober probably, I don't know, like 13, 15 years or something. And she kept trying to get me to show up and like actually be a part of AA. And you know, I kept telling her, I was like, it doesn't work for me. Like, I don't believe in God. I don't want any part of God. And she was just like, just try it. And I remember like committing to her and being like, all right, like I'll give these weirdos a year, and you know, I'm going to prove that like AA doesn't work. And she's like, all right, well, you can't take any shortcuts. And I was like, all right, like I'll do whatever they tell me to do. And at the same time, there was another guy working there. I think they were in cahoots with each other trying to get me into AA. And every day the guy asked me the same like 4 questions every single day. It was just like, hey, did you get a sponsor? Did you find a home group? Do you have a service commitment? Have you started working the steps? And it was every day. And you know, after a few weeks of like saying no and having to talk to this guy every single day, I finally like did it out of spite, because I didn't want to talk to this guy every day. And it was just getting annoying at that point of him just like hounding me. And but that's what I needed. Like I needed somebody to kind of ride my ass a little bit and try to get me involved. And you know, asking that first guy to be my sponsor was like more uncomfortable than anything I've probably ever done in my life. You know, I was like, hey dude, can you be my sponsor? And I was just like so nervous. It was like worse than getting up here. Like I was standing outside of the meeting. I was like, when do I go? When do I go? And I was like freaking out. And finally like ran up there and was like, hey, can you be my sponsor? Thanks, dude. And I ran away, and he was just like, what the fuck? Like, all right. and that's where like my really like my journey like actually started was actually having a service commitment, getting a sponsor and start working the steps and home groups and hanging out with people in AA and trying to get involved and giving out my number and calling people and so for that first year and a half, I bet I went to a meeting every single day, and some days it was multiples. But that first 6 months, 8 months, my dad really likes to go hunting. He loves to go hunting. He comes out here every single year and he goes hunting. And I'm a lot more into it now. But then it was more like I don't really care about anything right now. I'm just trying not to like drink today. This is where my focus is. And so he was coming over and he asked me and he was just like, hey, like, do you want to come hunting with me? And I was like, oh, like, I don't know, like, I'm pretty scared to do anything outside of what I'm doing right now. And I was worried, and he was totally supportive of it. He understood and was just like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I'd really love to have you there. And so after a while, talking to a lot of people, asking them, like, when is it okay to go? Like, how am I supposed to know if I can go? And they're like, dude, just like go. Give him a couple days, hang out for a couple days, hang out for the weekend, and just let it happen, man. And so I told him, I was like, all right, like I'll give you like 3 days, 4 days. That's like Thursday to Sunday, and then I was going to come home. And that 4 days was going to be the longest I had been to a meeting the whole entire time I've been sober. So it was kind of like a nervous thing that I had going on, and but I wanted to be there when he shot his deer. I wanted to finally have like this sober memory with my dad, because it had been 15 years since I could remember that I was sober at any sort of thing with my father, and so I wanted to be there like pretty bad. And I was like, all right, like let's start making some memories. This is kind of what this thing's all about. And so I went, and he ended up shooting on the last day, so it was a 9 or 10 day hunt. He made me stay the whole time. We're hiking around with him. I've been smoking cigarettes for 12 years, so I'm dying walking around, just like gasping for air. He's turning around, cracking jokes, like, well, when I was 30, I was at the prime of my life, and like saying all this shit. I was like, Dad, you're the worst. But we spent a lot of time together in that 9 or 10 days, and about day 6 or 7, we were hunting down kind of in the southern part of the state, and we went through Moab, and I noticed that they had like a meeting house down there. I was like, all right, they have a certain meeting at like 7 o'clock every single day. So I was like, if I feel like I'm getting squirrely, like it's only a couple hour drive, like that's not that big of a deal. Like I can probably make it. If I need to go to a meeting. And day 6 rolls around or whatever it was, and I asked him for his keys to his truck. I was like, hey, do you mind if I go into town and take your truck into town? And he hesitated, and he had a great reason for it. In years past, I had gone hunting with him, and I had gone into Moab, and either it came back with a lot of alcohols or figured out some sort of substance. And that had happened multiple times. So he hesitated, and I remember being like, Dad, just like trust me. Like this is what I'm doing. This is when I'm going to be back. I showed up to this meeting. There was people all the way from New York. There's people from Arkansas, all over the country. Great meeting. I found out in that meeting that AA can travel with you. I thought it was kind of like a regional thing at that point. I didn't really know it could leave the state, but that was pretty apparent. So I remember like going to this meeting, having this great time meeting all these people and talking about like this uncomfortability that I had, and like most of the people, they understood it because they had been there, and we sat there and talked for a while, and I ended up going back, and it was just me and him there. We're sitting around the fire. I hand him his keys. I thank him for letting me use his truck, and like start talking about this meeting and how amazing it was to meet all these people and talk to them and feel like I'm finally like doing something, and that I actually made it out of Moab without like trying to get loaded. And, it got pretty quiet there for a second. And we're just sitting around the fire, and he kind of just like looks up at me and he says, "Thank you." And like I didn't really know what he meant. I was like thank you for what? And he said like thank you for like being sober and spending some time with me. I knew at like that moment that like I was finally doing something right, which hadn't been the case for a long time. I have made a lot of bad decisions up until that point. But I knew at that one that like I'm like, maybe this is working. Like I've been trying to prove that this thing doesn't work, and maybe it is. Still 4.5 years later, I still think that's the greatest thing that's happened to me. Was having that moment with my father. It was powerful. It changed my whole trajectory. I was convinced that there was some sort of higher power in my life. Because I don't have those moments on my own. I don't know how to create those moments. I don't know how to do any of that. I know how to ruin a lot of those moments, or not be there, or not physically be there. But that's what like AA has given me. It's given me like a relationship with not only like this God that I thought was not possible to have, but to have like a relationship with him and with my dad and my brothers and my mom and all these other people that I've met in Alcoholics Anonymous. Like it's given me more than I ever thought it would. And that first year was pretty special. Year one's always, I'll always cherish that one for a long time. And AA's been great. It really has. It hasn't been easy. I like to do the really like up and down emotional roller coaster because I'm a psycho, and I just love to ride those lows and ride the highs and just be I'm all about it. But on the outside, it doesn't seem that way all the time. It seems like I'm pretty level-headed, but just inside, just like losing my mind. So like after that kind of happens, and I'm convinced that like Alcoholics Anonymous is working. Like some of these this therapist and this other guy are kind of like laughing. They're like, yeah, like this is what you get, because like before, like I wanted everything in Alcoholics Anonymous to be transactional. I was like, I wanted to do something and then get something in return, like very quickly. Like they were trying to get me to do a drug test at this thing. I was like, oh, like you should pay me for my services of doing this drug test or something. There was always something going on to where like whatever I was doing early on in sobriety, like I wanted something in return very quickly. And that same guy that hounded me with those questions all the time was just like, you get to like be sober and have a life. And I was like, well, that's not enough, and not knowing what I was getting into. And I remember telling that story, and like he comes up and he was just like, hey, like welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous, where you get to have like cool shit happen in your life. I've been through some really cool moments in Alcoholics Anonymous, some perspective changes in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was probably 2 years sober. Before that, I finally thought that I was ready to go home. I was freaking out still. It had been 1.5 years at this point. I missed Christmas that year. I had to have it out here, because I never felt like I was ready to go. It never felt like I was spiritually fit to really go out there and survive and come back. I didn't trust myself enough yet. Luckily, I had a sponsor, and he's kind of like this big, like, yoked gym dude that was like a big bodybuilder guy, but he does like nutrition coaching and stuff. And he actually like did something with with another member in Alcoholics Anonymous out in Reno. And so I was talking to him about this, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready yet, but like I want to go like soon. And so we started talking, and we started making this like plan. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna have you meet this pretty lady out there. He's like, don't sleep with her. That's your only number one rule. And I was like, all right. And he was just like, dude, like, you can do this, just like check in every single day, meet up with this girl, show up when you're supposed to, show up to the meetings, and like, you can go wherever you want. Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't need to just be here in Utah and you're trapped in Utah for the rest of your life and you can't leave. He's like, as long as you're really committed to this thing, like, you can go and do whatever you want. And at that moment, I didn't really know what that meant. But I decided to take like a leap of faith and ended up going out to Reno and met just like this like crazy lady out there. But she was amazing. She introduced me to all these other people in Alcoholics Anonymous and got me all these phone numbers. Like, if you need anything, you give me a call, you give these people a call, and we'll drag you through this weekend if we have to. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous does for me a lot of the times. It's like I'm unwilling to do some of the work, but I'm around it enough and involved enough to where people are just kind of dragging me through some things, even when I think I can't do it. Maybe the next year later, I was sitting in a meeting out here, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like 30. I think I was 30 at the time, and thinking that my life is over. Like, I don't have like a career yet. I don't have a house. I don't own a vehicle. I don't have all this. Like, I'm too far behind. I'm never going to be able to amount to shit. Like, my life sucks. And I was not happy with how things were going in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I ended up going home again. And I'm sitting there in this meeting, and all this shit is just like going through my head. And I'm just like kind of losing it sitting in there. And there was this, I think he was 82. This guy was 82 years old, and he got up and got his like first year chip. I was looking around, I was like, 82? Like, you're getting your first year? Like, wow, dude. Like, I was thinking, like, dude, if I was that guy, like, I would have packed it in. Like, you easily could have packed it in, like 60 something years of being an alcoholic, and now you're deciding to get sober. And like, I was sitting there kind of judging it like I usually do when people are talking. And just like so confused on like why he decided to do it now. And he got up there, and I could barely understand him. He had a very like a thick like Irish accent. And he said, it's never too late to start changing your life. Here I am sitting at 30 years old bitching about like not having this, or this, and thinking that my life is over. And there's this guy that's, more than twice my age gets up and says that. Like going to all these meetings and actually listening to what people are having to say has changed a lot of perspectives on like how I view what either my life looks like or how I want it to look. And there's so many people that I look up to in Alcoholics Anonymous. The people that I trust the most in my life are the people in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I never thought I would like even want to say that. But there's something about what we have going on here that where that common bond really makes sense. Like, I can talk to you guys about whatever. I can't always just go to my family and ask my dad that's never had a sip of alcohol before about all these crazy problems going on in my head, because he looks at me like I'm a psycho. I was just like, what is going on with you, Like, seems pretty normal with the decisions here. I was like, you don't know what I'm thinking, But like, you guys get it. You guys get me. You get what's going on in my life, and you understand it. And it's been amazing. Like, I owe everything in my life to being sober and being in recovery. And today it's still going to a lot of meetings. It's still sponsoring guys. It's still praying in the morning. It's still trying to meditate. Still meeting up with the sponsor. And trying to develop these principles that we talk about all the time, because it's something that I want. I want this principle of like honesty and integrity, and I want my word to mean something, and I want to actually care about other people, and like I don't know how to do that on my own. But through like working the steps and like staying around in Alcoholics Anonymous, like I've slowly started to like have these principles in my life that I've been looking for a long time. And it's been, hard to like be patient with the whole process. I hope that God just fixed me one day, but I don't think that's really how it works. but I know that like showing up and consistently doing this thing in Alcoholics Anonymous, that I can just like keep living one day at a time and keep trying to be a better man than I was yesterday. So that's enough out of me. Thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, Matt.